Hello and welcome to the ninth episode, I think, or maybe it is the 10th, I'm not sure. I think it is ninth. Of Fostering Freedom, yeah, that's the name of the show, or podcast rather. And I'm your host, Ohranje, and today we're going to be discussing a bit of a spicy topic. A bit of a spicy topic. And that is whether freedom of speech is defending pedophilia or pedophiles. It is gonna be tricky. It's not just about that, though. That is more of a bait to keep you listening on. But it is also about whether it is about defending anything, defending thieves, defending whatever nonsense exists in the world, defending tyranny, for example. Now, I was listening. The reason why I got inspired to do this, and I purposely put my other episodes for this podcast behind that I had recorded in order to put this out. And what prompted this was some, debate that I was listening to, and I might link the debate in the description. I might, maybe I'll forget. And in that, I'll give you the title so you can look it up. It's called, it's by a channel called Infrared, and the title is A Neoconservative or Neoconservative Gets Destroyed. And it has got that Kanzik flag with, or not a flag, but just a symbol with a, cross, red cross on it. And it's like the guy himself is an actual communist, like a authoritarian communist, not just any kind of run-of-the-mill communist. Anyway, I guess most of the communists that are actually communists are tankies in one way or another. I mean, most of their beliefs do require you to have a state that does enforce, whatever nonsense there exists. The most ridiculous thing about communism is the anarcho-communism. Like, Marx predicted that this will eventually happen, truly communism is going to be anarchist, right, or something like that. But that doesn't mean that you will constantly have to, be ANCOM. That the violent revolution itself will eventually lead to ANCOMism, apparently. But that's not going to happen. It is imaginary. It is very imaginary because in an anarchist order, you're thinking about no rulers, right? And of course, people will protect their private property. You're not going to be able to abolish private property or the means of production or any of that. You're not going to be able to, abolish them. Of course, I mean, someone today was like, oh, but we're not going to abolish them. We're just going to abolish the private ownership of them. Well, that's like abolishing them. There's no public ownership without a government. What is public ownership? Do I own something that is, fucking 5,000 miles away from me? Just because it is in public ownership in an ANCOM world, it is not possible. Besides, you need a state-like order to, kind of have these goals in the first place, because, the ANCOMs just assume that the entire world is going to agree with them at some point or another. And there's a guy called Wash, which is pretty famous, and that guy is way weird. He's like questioned the age of consent, I think, or something of that level before, or maybe he has something or the other there. Anyway, what he said was, usually that's what you find here. What he said was that, what did he say? That the workers will eventually realize that the arrangement is unfair, and so the entire world revolution is going to happen eventually when people start realizing this. And the means to do this, by the way, the funniest bit is the means to do it is through liberalism. Right. So, under liberalism, workers will eventually somehow realize that their arrangement is not fair, which is not true, by the way. And then, one after another, throughout the entire world, they will turn communist and then stop the means of production, private production. It's just not viable. It's impossible to think that the people will not defend their property, will not defend their private property, and there's going to be contention worldwide. I mean, this is simply impossible to have private property, taken away from people like this. I mean, it's not possible. And even if you were talking about means of production, that's not possible either. You're not going to be able to do that. Because there's no single definition of what a means of production is. Let me define it. If I right now have a plant, right? I mean, if you have dealt with succulents, you'll understand this very well. If I have a plant right now, not like a oxygen plant or some industrial application, just a plant, like a succulent. And I basically, have another pot and that is empty. I just take a cutting from it, put it inside there, can produce a new plant. This is now means of production. How are you going to be able to seize these from someone who's got hundreds and hundreds of these, for example, and wants to, someone else is like, oh, well, you have hundreds and hundreds of them. I want to have, more plants that you have, where I like that. This guy's like, well, what do you want to give me for that? So there's a direct exchange that is going on here. There's a voluntary exchange that's going on here, and there's one person who's got the means of production. At any given point, you have the means of production with you. There's no consistency within the left. I mean, it is absolutely balls to walls crazy. What kind of nonsense there is. Oh, but that is not really what we were talking about, but this is what we were talking about, but that is not what we were talking about, but this is what we were talking about. It is just undefinable. And that is why their definitions are just like Plato. They're always so malleable. They're always so changing. Today I just got sucked into some argument because of some communist wrote an entire letter describing some belief, and he had a very, very wrong things to define the left. He said the left believes in empathy and humanity. Oh, that's not true. There's nothing empathetic about stealing, is what basically we went back and forth about this, and it was a regrettable decision because the entire thing was about definition, right? So the definitions were so malleable that you just couldn't have a productive discussion about it. So there's really no way to define anything, even within the left. Anything. I mean, I'm not saying that the entire right has some kind of right idea, but at least the right doesn't pretend that taxation isn't a necessary evil, that it isn't taking your money by force, right? I mean, that is what is agreed upon, right? I'm not saying that it is a necessary evil. I think it is immoral down to the level of absolutely being satanic. That is the degree of immorality that I associate with with the state itself. So therefore, that extends to taxation, and it is immoral. It is taking what you're entitled to because it is yours, and putting a gun to your head and just taking it away. So there's absolutely no disagreement between the right with regards to, or at least who is really on the right with regards to, one of the most striking features that I think Rothbard was the one who defined it first, or where I read it first, was, the presence of, or maybe it was Hopper where I read it first from. Was it, actually? But yeah, maybe it was Rothbard, and we read it on Hopper. But anyway, these people, either of them, said that the right is the one that recognizes that hierarchies exist, and that is, or natural hierarchies exist, and that is the defining feature of the right, because there's so much variation within the right that it is very impossible to kind of put a finger on any group and be like, okay, this is at least what you agree on, right? I mean, it's not possible. This is why, the more radical you get, the more you start seeing some of these so-called right wingers as what they are, socialists. So, because of their malleable and ever-changing definitions. But one thing that strikes is social hierarchy, natural social hierarchy. And that is one thing that, the right always agrees on, while the left doesn't. The left is absolutely in denial that there exists anything such as an emergent hierarchy between people. And also, one of the reasons why I think they think that, Nazism or fascism is to the right of them. Because, in one way, at least fascism has some kind of, ethical means of making a hierarchy, and that's too traditional, or not ethnical, and that's too traditional, right? So it's kind of closed in their heads to, some kind of a natural hierarchy, and that's why they associated with right. I don't know. God knows. I mean, everything that they don't like them being associated with, that's what they give the name far right or right wing, right? Just to get that stain off of them, to try their ideology again and again and again. That is what the entire sham is about. It's not about whether what is actually right, what is actually left. It is always and always about what is that we don't want to associate with, so we don't get shamed on by the public, so we can grift again, have our whatever thing that we have implemented again, and then lose again, and then whatever it was, just call it right wing. Like right now, you might not realize it, but the way that they made sort of Nazism and fascism right wing, that is kind of how they're trying, or they have attempted for a while, to make USSR right wing as well. They're just starting to call it state capitalist, right? So this is now a new attempt to make something that was communism, that was left wingism, into something that is now suddenly a right wing thing, because it's just right wing to have a gulag or whatever. It's just right wing, right? You guys never think that it is on the left, right? It is right wing. Yeah, it is right wing. That's what they try to do. They always try to reinforce these sorts of false set of belief, on the set of on everybody. But what I wanted to talk about is freedom of speech, right? So the problem with freedom of speech is, let's get back to first the neocon question. They're not two different things to me. I mean, it's just really about splitting hairs. They're both the same in action. They don't really differentiate from each other. Just that the hair splitter of a difference between neocon and neoliberal would be the neocon is some kind of hierarchy recognizer, as I already put it, and the neoliberal is not. He creates he sort of imagines that that hierarchy has to be dictated from somewhere. It doesn't emerge. It has to be made first, like on purpose. So that is perhaps the only difference, but it doesn't really matter. That difference doesn't make any sense. In action, they're all the same. So this moron comes on and he says, oh, well, the liberal democracies, they have a lot of freedoms. They have a lot of freedoms of speech. They have a lot of things that you can do. You can wear whatever hedonistic clothing that you want in a liberal democracy. You can make your hair look like a fucking, porcupine's back. And of course, that is acceptable in liberal democracies. If you were somewhere that is very fascistic or very, whatever he said, you get the point. You get what he's trying to paint. You get that he's, standing for people who are wearing, women's clothes or whatever. That is what he's trying to do, right? That is what he's trying to do. So he's like, okay, you can do this in a liberal democracy. How about you do this in Iran? Gotcha, bitch. So that is what he's saying. But the problem with that is that these liberal morons have got nothing to go on about. Because if you think about it, if an area is yours, say if you come into my house, I have no freedom of speech in my house. I can kick you out. That much is recognized. But why don't they recognize the same for a local community? Why don't they recognize the same for anywhere else? Right? It's just not recognized. It's put in the name of freedom of speech, so you can do whatever. You can go ahead and disrespect anybody anywhere and cause any degeneracy toward anyone entirely without any kind of repercussions against you. Now, in a voluntarist order, in a private order, people recognize that, okay, this is not possible. Let me put it in a way that, that the right wing may understand it. The people who stand freedom of speech so much. First of all, I don't want the freedom of speech to be gone away on a state level, but at the same time, recognize that it doesn't really matter. Freedom of speech doesn't matter at all if it's some kind of a Chomskyite freedom of speech. What Chomskyite freedom of speech means in this context is, okay, have only so much freedom of speech that is allowed so that the illusion of freedom of speech is maintained. The illusion is maintained, the reality is not. What is meant by that? Well, all freedom of speech's purpose is to inspire action. All of it. Literally, all of freedom of speech's action is to inspire. Freedom of speech is purpose is to inspire action. Without the inspiration to action, freedom of speech is absolutely useless. The American state recognizes this. Liberal democracies recognized this a long time ago. And what else? China is actually pretty weak in this sense. It's not really because they don't have freedom of speech, which is why they're weak. It is because they don't recognize the fact that, okay, you don't have to ban the entire thing altogether. All you have to do is just scrap the call to action from there, and no matter what they say, it doesn't mean anything, because whatever they say now is under our radar. See, China inadvertently kind of creates more freedom of speech in this way, because now that everybody knows and everybody is aware that, okay, if you want to say these things, you have to say it in a way that you can get away with it. And this is why the people who in China are resisting are ghosted, completely ghosted on the platforms that they say these things, because they realize that that's the only way that they can say these things. That's the only way that they can say these things. Meanwhile, in America, when you say these things, you think that, oh, it's so freedom of speech, it's so good. When you're saying these things, when you're saying your dangerous opinions online or anywhere, they are being associated with you all the time. They know. They have done this on purpose to give you the illusion of freedom, to give you the satisfaction, the safety of thinking that, okay, whatever you say belongs to you, and, nobody's ever going to use it against you. They're always on the watch for this. And then, when you have your dangerous opinions online or whatever, they can just use it against you. And the biggest flaw in this system, let me remind you, is that, okay, in China, you have to be moronic to say anything against the state, right? I mean, yeah. Other than that, everybody who holds these views against it. If China wanted to, increase their censorship, they'll get away with it because they have never said anything that has been associated with their real name online or anywhere else, or their real IP address even, or their whatever address that they can get from that post, right? Or any kind of record like that. In America, if fascism were to happen today, which I mean, read Lee Rockwell, it is, what is fascism or something it is called. I would argue it is already here, but people get very squirmy about that because they think that is a leftist talking point. But it really, realistically, should not be. I mean, I think the left got it from here, and then they used it as ammo just to throw it out in the world. It's clearly not working. Most people cheer it on. But anyway, if actually fascism, as we understand it, or any kind of authoritarian, regime comes down on America today, what is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? It's every information that they want against you is out there. Every moron with the sexual identity, the comfort that has been given by these states to the people who are protected classes, who think, they're telling you, oh, put your little gender identification everywhere. Now we are also accepting gender identifications on driving licenses. Oh, now we're already accepting gender identifications here, there, everywhere. This is all a front to get you in. You're being jibbed. You're being jibbed as we speak. When you put if you are some kind of a gender fluid or whatever person, realize that rude words don't mean anything online. What really amounts to something is you giving that information to the state because they can act on it. Nobody else can. Nobody else. If you have an anonymous Twitter account or something like that, where you post all your gayness or whatever you have in different ways, gender fluidity or whatever the new terms are, nobody is going to be invested enough to go and do anything about it. However, if the government thinks that, okay, today we're decided, or it's not going to go like that, there's probably going to be a radical change or something like that. Today we have decided to go against these people and then go against these people. It's going to be the reverse effect. It's going to be the reverse of what has been happening to conservatives. What has been happening to conservatives is that frog boiling in water experiment all the time. And if you remember, early on in the internet conservative circles, this experiment was the most rampant stuff ever before 1984 took its place as the most, quoted thing among these circles, and that is now fading away. But this experiment was the one that was most quoted, where the frog is put in boiling water, it immediately jumps out. The frog is put in normal water, and then it gets to boil slowly. The entire body's energy is kept spent on adapting, so it is too late to jump out. And that is what has happened to a lot of third world countries. Actually, most of the people in third world countries, as aggressive as they might seem, I think the aggression is manifesting in different ways. The aggression is really against the frustration of not being able to do anything anymore, for anything. They have been worn down. They're tired completely. They're hopeless. Hopelessness is so frustrating. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable how hopeless they have become. And this is someone who's living here. And, the history is actually littered with some, very revolutionary people and all that. But now everybody's grown spineless. Everybody's scared of everything. Everybody's got those, crazy liberal eyes that, distrustful of everybody else in the entire community and the entire society. Everybody has to, be careful all the time of something or the other happening to them from government or somewhere else. And, this is what happens. So, this is not something that has happened in their so-called liberal democracies so far. Now, what they're being jibbed into is Oh, give all your data to the government. Tell the government your gender identity. So what happens? What happens when the dangerous people get in power? They'll just look up all the people that have these gender identities on their social security or driving licenses, and boom, that's it. Game over. Game over for your nonsense. So it's not that liberal democracy really offer any kind of freedom of speech. What are you gonna do with it? That's the question. What are you gonna do with this kind of freedom that you want to put your, sexual identity on your driving license or something like that? You are literally being bought by people on the left, or people with some kind of fascistic motive down the line. Not that they're doing it intentionally. I think the left is dumb enough to do it to themselves, and they don't even realize it. But another point about that is, let's say that you have a pedophile living in your community, and what happens when he diddles a child in a voluntary order? What happens then? What happens is you and a bunch of other people decide to get together, go inside his home, shoot his motherfucking ass up, and expel his entire family for not instilling in him the good values that he should have. It's not their fault. It's not their fault as to what has happened, but why didn't they have instilled these values and the repercussions that happens when you are such a degenerate moral figure? Honestly, it's simply not possible. This is what happens in a voluntary order. Well, of course, I'm not saying that they're going to shoot him up. What really is going to happen is there's going to be a contract of people who are simply not welcome in your community or whatever. So if you're a pedophile, most likely you'll get shot. At least in a lot of places, you will get shot. What happens now? What happens today? Oh, he's diddled your kid? We're gonna do due process. Meanwhile, you gotta live with the guy who's diddled your kid. He's looking on your face because he's gonna get out in a few years. He's gonna get out, live with a bunch of other kid diddlers, because that's what they do in these communities. They go in places where there's a lot of other kid diddlers that live there, because they have to kind of knock on each of the people's houses and tell them that they're a sexual offender or something like that. So what they're or registered sex offender, what they have figured out now is to find these places, and you can look this up. They have figured out a way to make an entire place full of sexual offenders, child sex offenders or whatever, so that they can just live there, and everybody knows that everybody else is a child sex offender. Now, every liberal is gonna listen to this and be all glib, like, "Oh my God, that's such a good thing. They have expelled themselves from society." No, that's not what I want. If my child gets his life ruined by no fault of his own, I want the person who is behind this dead entirely. You should get out of planet Earth if you do this. This is now, in order to enact this, get this. You have to have call to action. You have to have calls to action to get rid of bad politicians the same way. You have to have calls to action to get rid of anything that is bad in society. That is the real freedom of speech. When you remove the call to action, when you say, "Oh, you can say this, but you can't make these threats, but you can't really organize," you use it to, call for violence or whatever nonsense that they have. Well, if you don't call for that, what good use is it? What good use is having freedom of speech without any call to anything? It is useless. It is neutral. It makes you follow a certain pre-programmed Chomsky, path that you must take in order for any action to happen. So what must happen in this scenario, and even that doesn't happen, by the way, what must happen in this freedom of speech liberal democracy is that you make a party that makes all the changes eventually, and by the time you're on your deathbed, or maybe even after that, maybe never, you will have some kind of relief or halfway negotiation on what kind of justice you want. And local communities cannot make their own laws. Local places cannot make their own laws regarding these things. They give you the illusion of choice. The real illusion of choice doesn't exist in the market. The real illusion of choice exists in the state. They tell you that you can make your own laws. Can I make my own laws? Literally, can I make my own local laws that anybody who's espousing pedophilia is going to get expelled from my community? Can I make my own laws that anybody who is espousing communism in my community gets expelled? Can I make my own laws regarding this? Absolutely not. This is not going to happen in this order. And of course, when you talk about, let's say there's certain subversive politicians that are doing these actions, that are malicious to the community in these ways, that are catering to certain people, that are putting everything to vote, where everything must not be put to vote. When you want call to action for these things to happen, it can't happen. Guess what? It can't happen. You can't do it because it's a little bit too dangerous. It's a bit too non-freedom of speech. Now you call for some kind of action. That is where it matters. And you just denied me that opportunity. That is the real freedom of speech. Because what happens when you have real freedom of speech, by the way? What happens? What do you think would have exactly happened with so many politicians that people are so angry with? What do you think would happen with so many laws, rules, regulations that are, just unjust? What do you think is going to happen to taxation and things of that nature? People will be like, okay, this is immoral. Let's wake the normies up. Let's call this. Let's call that. Let's explain to them this is what's happening. What do we gotta do here? We gotta do this. We gotta do that. We gotta go here. We gotta, we gotta, then get out. That is what is gonna really happen. Discussion would stop being about this nonsense, just going about whatever is seemingly logical and talking about the possibilities and going from ideology to ideology like some monkey with a, on a branch to branch tour of the jungle. That is not going to happen anymore. What's going to happen after that is, okay, you and I agree. We are both against the status quo. This is immoral. This is unjustified. We just gotta convince enough people so that they don't turn against us when we do this. Let's just convince these people that this is, absolutely wrong. That's absolutely immoral. Take them the fuck out, and then we're gonna get a better order. That's gonna send a message for anything in the future to correct itself. If there was really, let's say, what do you call it? Capital death, capital punishment for pedophilia. What do you think is going to happen to all the pedophiles in this community where there's, capital punishment for pedophilia? What do you think is going to happen? Just imagine what is going to happen to this instinct. Okay, so if you are, let's say, in the case of leftists, if you are born pedophile, I don't believe that nonsense. I think they are enabled by a lot of people. But anyway, if you even are that way, you are going to shut the fuck up and never, ever, ever even think about saying such things. Leave alone enacting of these things. Because you know what's going to happen? The entire society where this certain law is made in a voluntary order, when people agree that, okay, this is our contract, this is what you can do to these people, they're never going to utter a single word. You're never going to know who they are. They're going to live with you. They're going to die. And nobody will ever know. Nobody will ever need to know. They'll never be able to do anything. I'm sure there's going to be some people who risk it enough to die for it. That's just how it goes for everything. That's just how it goes for murder. That's just how it goes for everything else. But this is an entire lie. That freedom of speech somehow matters now because you are in a liberal democracy and now you can say anything. Yeah, just say everything. Say everything out loud so the government knows when the time comes who to take out first. Say out loud how many, things you have, what kind of a protester you are, what kind of, all the liberal things that you want to happen, all the guns that you have, all the rights that you think people should have. Say it out loud. Say it out loud, right? Because when the time comes, they're gonna take you out. That's what's gonna happen. And this is the nonsense freedom of speech that everybody stands. FBI, by the way, already has an entire book of Nazism and Nazis and known Nazis and suspected Nazis. They pay a lot of people a lot of visit throughout the year based on a lot of suspicions that they have. Why do you think so many shooters that they get are nearly always visited by the FBI on some level? Why do you think that is? They do that actively to the people that they suspect. That is what they do. And now, what is happening is that, this is the freedom of speech. You call this freedom of speech? This is nonsense. At least in China, the people who actually believe this stuff, or, actually believe in all of this stuff, some people are, believing so much that they just want to leave China, right? They risk getting kicked out of there or punished there just to make an example out of themselves, just to be a martyr for the cause or something like that. Most of the people who believe all this stuff, they stay quiet. The government doesn't really know, even now, at that point, that you believe in this stuff, because everything you do is ghosted. Every conversation that is dangerous enough. I read somewhere about maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, that a lot of dangerous conversations for people, this was some university student or college student, so this is where, dangerous conversations are had. What really happens is they do face-to-face interaction with these people, and be careful about it, because they're CCP agents who really, are suspect about this. Now, what happens in America? Of course, there's no CCP agents. There's the CIA. That is what happens in a liberal democracy. Of course, we gotta follow procedure, and I'm sure they have their own, plans and records that they keep on a lot of things. At least they keep a record of, what is going on and what is not going on. But for these people that believe in dangerous ideas, they have to tread carefully, and in that carefulness, at least they avoid a lot of things that happen to them. And of course, this also makes their, party or whatever a bit stronger. That is undeniable, because they have the records on everybody. So if anybody joins or wants to join the Communist Chinese Party or whatever, they must really be some kind of a brainwashed, person, almost really literally brainwashed to the level that their commitment is entirely to the party itself. And, the party itself is a career path, and, someone rightly said, and that is what it is in China. It is a career path. It is literally career politicianism, where the party is more run like an egoist private company. And for those who don't know what egoism is, it is something by Max Stirner, so you can look up the books. But what I can summarize it as, okay, if I can put a barrel of my gun on it and win that area or whatever, win that property, that it is mine. And he believed that, okay, if you want a truly capitalist order, what capitalists have got to do is get together with guns, whatever, and by force just have your own community and just be like, okay, this is our community, and you can't do shit about it. So that is what the world is an egoist order. If you think from a state's perspective, if you think of it that way, it is like ego is private in 1,000 courts order, because I don't think this is truly private. It is just an excuse for a different kind of left system. But that is what the Chinese are doing, and it is run kind of like a private company where people are in there are advancing, just like a private company does, and they're punished. They're heavily punished, and not just punished; they're put in jail and stuff by by the party members for doing wrong, by the people for taking a lot of loans, for doing a lot of things that are shady. I'm not some kind of a China stand, but I'm just putting it out there, just saying that this is how it works there. So it's not like not like America or any other place that pretends to be for freedom of speech. Sure, you can say a lot of stuff. Yeah, you can say a lot of stuff, but in saying that, you're putting a lot at risk. And the same goes for China. But when it really does matter, it doesn't matter what you can and cannot say. Because at that point, a lot of things are not allowed to say. But yeah, that was, I think that was all that I have to say on the matter. Um, I had a lot of other things with examples, just not about pedophiles. Something else. For example, there's, what can you do with a call to action? Oh yeah, this is one of the key things that I wanted to mention was that what comes first, the thought or the action? This is one of the things that really were brought to question by the humanities section of university. I don't know for what reason, but as far as I remember, it was because of people questioning humanities as a legitimate path, at least in my country, in India. It was because people were like, okay, as a nation, can we really say that we need humanities at this point? The STEM is the thing that is, giving us money or resources or whatever. What are we really getting out of funding humanities in universities? And every, at that point, colleges are mostly or nearly 90%, government owned or whatever. So not private colleges, but of course, government colleges are 90% of the colleges. Is what I meant to say. And what happened then? Maybe it was a Western argument that they brought here, but anyway, it was like, okay, what comes first? Does the thought of eating something comes first, or eating it itself comes first, and the thought comes afterwards? So is it the action or the thought? And as far as I remember, and as far as this debate has been going on again and again and again in different forms, iterations, with modern context, the thought has won, right? Not the girl. That came out wrong, but yeah, the thought has won in terms of what came first, the action or the thought. The thought came first. That is pretty much obvious, right? So when the thought comes first and the action second, and this is not just me assuming it, this is happening, right? A lot of actions that you do are just verbal in nature, right? So moving your hands while talking, that is a sort of verbal thing. That is a form of communication that you're doing. That is a form of thinking that is happening. But you can imagine that the thought is coming first, right? It is the creation first is in some form of communication, some level of communication, not entirely in words, but some signal in your brain that are communicating a little bit of picture or data of what you want to do, and then it happens, right? Even you're doing simple tasks. So, as such, what comes first? If you want to inspire some kind of a collective action, right? Collective action, not in terms of, just owning the people or owning something that you don't really do or whatever, but getting people together, telling them about something, and then, this is the answer, this is the action that we gotta do to have this happen. That is what you gotta do. What has to happen before this? What has to happen before this is the speech to call this action has to come first. You can't really have a revolution if you are not able to call for a revolution. Okay, let's talk about it in this way. Let's say that I have to go to a party, and I want to take a lot of my buddies with me to the party. If I just go to the party by myself, are they just gonna let be known about it telepathically that I went to the party or that I want them to go to the party with me? No, I have to call to the action that, oh, would you guys like to go to the party with me because the party is here and whatever, you don't need a reason. So they're gonna be like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, whatever they say. But the action has been inspired by a call to action first. If you remove the call to action entirely, what good is it? What good is it just saying, oh, there's a party going on there, guys? Wink, wink. Everybody's like, oh, wink, wink. What does he mean by this? Should we roofie the drinks? What do you mean? There's a party. Yeah, there's a party going on. Just letting you guys know there's a party going down. And, this is a party. This is the description of the party. This is what is going on. That is literally what these kind of, liberal democracy retards do all the time. And stand all the time. This is the kind of freedom of speech, by the way, that they're standing. Oh, just tell people about stuff and, if you say anything more, ooh, big bad action. It's useless. It's useless. At least the Reichsbürgers in Germany are not going to be stupid enough to deny whatever they want to deny. In front of the German government or anything else. They're going to ghost themselves. At least they're not going to tell the government about how many arms exactly that they have or whether they even have them in the first place. Sure, a lot of them are stupid, but it is what it is. And that is what it takes you away from. That is what it takes away from you. With this kind of terminology, this leftist terminology, freedom of speech, right? Leftists always want to talk in dual terms, that we are for empathy, we are for humanity. That's just the latest example. Oh, we are for freedom, we are for liberty. That is also what they say. We are for liberty, we are for freedom. What kind of freedom is that? What kind of freedom is state slavery? Is that freedom? Is it freedom to have taken away all your options first, and then the only option that you have left with is to work in these pre-selected, presets for you? That's not freedom. That's literally a changing of the definitions. You're changing the entire definition of the map. This is a truly leftist tactic to make you think of good terms. It's like a taqiyya in Quran. What is it? It's lying about the tenets of Islam. It's lying about what it is like, or lying about anything to convert someone else. That is what leftists practice all the time. All the time. It is what they practice. And it is what they preach as well. All the, hoodwink or whatever the good, the term is, dog whistling, that is what happens with all these liberals that kind of get the message. You're not supposed to say the thing out loud. That is the sort of thing that is happening between leftists. When they do a lot of stuff like this, when they have these terms that mean something else, but then they adopt them, they adore them, and then they're like, or not adorn them, adorn them, and then they're like, oh, but yeah, I am about this. It is literally wolf in sheep's clothing sort of logic. And that is what happens. So anyway, that is all I have to say about the matter. Don't be fooled by any of this nonsense. Actions are inspired first by words, first by what I'm saying, and then it sort of happens. Everything else is just a wink wink nonsense, that keeps on going on until so many people enough have the understood definition of what this wink wink is, and then something, that you really want to happen happens. Or maybe even then, it doesn't happen. It's, everybody is just lost and become sort of a loser into thinking that, okay, this is some freedom of speech. And yeah, that's all I have to say on the matter. I have a lot more to say, actually. But I just can't remember right now, or, I'll get repetitive in trying to find it, first. So, yeah, that's about it. See you guys later. Thank you for listening, and take care. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye.